Man, this story hits close to home, like I'm spilling my own life onto the page. The day everything flipped upside down, my own personal D-Day, was about 18 months back. Now, some folks might tell you having daughters is the greatest thing ever, but that's not been my experience. My eldest girl, she's been a whirlwind, pushing me to the edge. It's like she was the first domino to topple, dragging the whole family down with her. And my wife? Well, let's just say she's got her own part in this mess. The day my first daughter came into the world, I felt dread, not joy. My younger daughter, though, she's a blessing, the total opposite of her sister. Let me paint you a picture of who I am. I'm Brandon Wheeler, 45 years old, married to my wife, Colleen, who's 42. I'm just a regular guy, living out in Wichita, Kansas, hauling packages for a delivery company. It's honest work, bringing in about 90 grand a year, enough to keep us from scraping by, but not exactly rolling in it. Colleen runs a small outfit, a cleaning and catering service for events, pulling in anywhere from 60 to 70 grand depending on the gigs. Problem is, she only chips in for groceries. All the big bills, mortgage, utilities, you name it, land on me. Her business handles office cleanups and party catering, with a few folks on her payroll. Our house is paid off, so we should be sitting pretty, but between Colleen's shopping sprees and our youngest's private school tuition, the money's tighter than it should be. We've got two girls, a 21-year-old, Kiera, who's been nothing but trouble, and a 19-year-old, Hannah, who's a gem. Kiera's been a handful since middle school. Back when she was 14, we got a call from her school in Topeka. She'd gotten into a fist fight with another girl. I had to fork over 5 grand to cover medical bills for both of them, since Kiera started it. Why? She claimed the other girl stole her boyfriend. Boyfriend? At 14? I was floored. I grew up as the youngest of 5 brothers in a working-class family in Tulsa. Our mom passed away when I was born, so my dad and brothers raised me. Hard work, blue-collar values, that's my world. College was never really on the table. Most folks around us worked for a big manufacturing plant, Harper Industries. My dad put in 53 years there, and my brothers followed suit. But things shifted back in the 90s. Trade deals sent jobs overseas, India, mostly, and companies like Harper either moved or dodged unions. I was in the union, making close to 110 grand at 25. Married Colleen, bought our house outright. Then the layoffs hit. I landed the delivery job, but it's nowhere near what I used to make. Looking back, I should have gone to college, maybe moved somewhere like Denver or Omaha for better opportunities. Around here, jobs dried up, and the neighborhood's gone downhill, more folks on assistance, less of the community I knew. I waited too long, missed my shot. Didn't help that I didn't have any college-educated role models growing up. I married Colleen because she was the first woman I felt something for, but I didn't dig into her past. If I had, I might have seen where Kiera got her wild streak. They say the apple doesn't fall far, right? Thing is, I'd never been with anyone else. Colleen and my girls are the only women I've ever been close to. When Kiera was 15, we got another call from her school in Topeka. I was working long shifts, 12 hours, 5 days a week, so I couldn't get there until after 5:30. Colleen was already at the principal's office. Kiera had been caught smoking with some boys, hanging with a crowd dealing weed at school. I grounded her, took her phone for a month, cut her allowance for 3. Thought that'd fix it. But then the school called again. 3rd time. This one broke me. The principal could barely get the words out, she was so mortified. Kiera had been caught in the bathroom, doing unspeakable things with multiple boys for cash. I lost it. Sitting in that office, hearing those words, I went numb. Couldn't even look at her. The image of what she'd done burned into my brain, shattering any sense of her innocence. Growing up around guys, my instinct was to come down hard. When we got home, I didn't hit her, but I did slap her a few times out of sheer frustration. Colleen stepped in, shielding her, and it sparked a huge fight. They both stormed out to stay with her cousin for a couple of days. Looking back, I know I screwed up. I should have handled it better, but what father wouldn't lose it? I started wondering if I'd caused Kiera's behavior. We raised her with love, gave her everything. I wasn't a troublemaker growing up, never drank, never fought, always pitched in at home. My dad and brothers gave me a solid, happy upbringing, even without mom. But Colleen? I didn't know enough about her past to see where Kiera's rebellion came from. Eventually, I let them back home, and we set some strict rules. But deep down, I knew it was too late to fix what was already broken. Word about Kiera's mess spread like wildfire through her school in Topeka. Turns out, she'd been involved with 9 boys in that bathroom incident. Kids were whispering about it in the halls, and some even recorded parts of it on their phones. Those videos circulated among students and even reached a few parents. The school bigwigs were desperate to keep it hush-hush, didn't want their name dragged through the mud in the local news. So, Kiera dodged any real punishment, no suspension or anything, to avoid a bigger spotlight. The school cracked down hard on kids sharing the video, suspending a few to scare the rest, and they mostly managed to bury it. But for me, it was a nightmare. I went from being Brandon, the dependable delivery guy in Wichita, to that girl's dad, the one whose daughter was caught doing shameful stuff in a school bathroom. You can imagine the humiliation, the stares from neighbors who used to just wave hello. It hit me hard, especially because my youngest, Hannah, was right there watching this all unfold. Colleen and I knew we couldn't let Hannah get pulled into Kiera's chaos. Teenage girls soak up everything, especially from their older siblings, and we weren't about to let Hannah go down that road. So, I started grinding harder at work, picking up extra shifts to save up for a Catholic boarding school in Lincoln, Nebraska. Sending Hannah there was the best decision I ever made, hands down. Kiera, though? We couldn't afford to send her too, and honestly, I thought she was too far gone at 15. I mean, what's worse than what she did with those 9 boys? I figured that was rock bottom. Boy, was I wrong, she was just warming up. Growing up in Tulsa, I was always careful, thinking through every move before I made it. How would it affect people? What would they think? That's just how I was wired, part of my upbringing with my dad and brothers. Colleen, though, she's the opposite. She acts on impulse, says things without a filter, and then regrets it later. Sounds familiar? Yeah, Kiera's cut from the same cloth. Colleen's spur-of-the-moment antics have caused fights and burned bridges. I'm always stuck playing the peacemaker, cleaning up her messes. I stopped going to public events with her, like baseball games or big family gatherings, because of it. One time, at a Wichita Wind Surge game, she tried to cut in line at the concession stand, right in front of another couple. I told her to chill, that we're no better than anyone else, but she didn't listen. Next thing I know, she's shoving the woman, and the woman's husband pushes back. I had to step in to back Colleen up, even though I warned her. It turned into a full-on brawl, fists flying, beer bottles smashing. Cops showed up, but I got lucky. I'd volunteered with the Wichita Fire Department and knew some of the officers from high school, so they let me slide. That was in my 30s, but stuff like that kept happening. Here's the kicker, Colleen only pulls this nonsense when I'm around. If I'm not there, she's fine, but with me by her side, it's like she's itching to embarrass me or land me in hot water. So, I started avoiding big outings to dodge the drama. It wasn't always like this, or at least, I didn't notice it at first. When I met Colleen in her late teens, her wild side was exciting. We'd pull pranks, act reckless in public, it was a rush. But once we started a family, that thrill wore off fast. I kept hoping she'd grow out of it, but here we are, years later, and she's still the same. Then there's the accusations. Colleen's got this habit of claiming I'm eyeing other women, ready to cheat, just because I glance at someone passing by. It sparks these big arguments, even though I'm working 12-hour days and barely have time to breathe, let alone cheat. Later, I figured out she was projecting, accusing me to cover her own tracks. Like they say, point one finger, and 3 point back at you. And don't get me started on her shopping obsession. Everyone's got their vice, mine's probably eating too many burgers, but hers is blowing cash on clothes. She's always chasing validation, buying new outfits to feel good, even at 42. She shops almost daily, yet her paycheck never touches our bills. I don't even know where her money goes. If Colleen would just pitch in with the bills, we could have sent both Kiera and Hannah to that boarding school in Lincoln, Nebraska, and maybe even had a little breathing room financially. After Kiera's bathroom stunt, I should have kept a closer eye on her, but the kids at her Topeka school wouldn't let it go. They teased her mercilessly, and she started ditching classes. She'd act like she was heading to school, only to hang out with a rough crowd, probably smoking weed. I thought things were under control since I hadn't heard from the school in a while. I was working overtime to cover Hannah's tuition on my own, with no help from Colleen, so I leaned on her to make sure Kiera was showing up to class. Big mistake. About a year later, two things hit me like a ton of bricks. First, I hadn't gotten a single call or letter from Kiera's school, so I figured she was doing better. Second, Kiera and Colleen got tight, real tight, like they were best buddies. At first, I thought it was weird, maybe even unhealthy, but since no red flags came up from the school, I assumed Colleen had Kiera on the right path. She never mentioned any problems, so I let myself believe everything was fine. Then, when Kiera was 17, I came home early one day, feeling like I had been hit by a truck. As I pulled into our Wichita driveway, I spotted this lanky guy, maybe in his early 20s, standing on my front lawn. He said he was Kiera's friend, just dropping her off to grab something and waiting to give her a ride. I told him I'd handle it and send him on his way, but something felt off. Colleen's catering van was parked out front, so she was home. I jotted down the guy's license plate and car details, just in case he was up to no good, like casing the place for a break-in. As he drove off, I rushed inside. Kiera was bolting out the door, looking like she was in a hurry. I asked who the guy was, and she brushed it off, saying he was just a friend. I pointed out he didn't look like a high school kid, and she admitted he'd already graduated. I pressed her, why was she hanging out with some older guy instead of being in class? She fed me a line about a canceled class, but I wasn't buying it. I thought she'd turned things around since that bathroom incident 2 years back, but this screamed trouble. It wasn't just skipping school, she was running with a guy who looked like he could be dealing weed. My gut told me she was spiraling, and I'd been clueless. Since Colleen's van was there, I figured she might know something, especially with how close she and Kiera had gotten. I called out for her, but she didn't answer. Then I heard noises from the basement and headed down. Colleen was coming up the stairs, and the smell hit me like a wall, weed, strong and unmistakable, clinging to her breath and wafting from the basement. I told her I was homesick and asked if she knew about the guy dropping Kiera off or the canceled class excuse. I thought she'd be shocked, but she just shrugged it off, saying he was Kiera's friend and they were just picking something up. I was floored. I told her I didn't want that guy around again and to tell Kiera to cut ties with him. I was too sick to keep arguing, so I let it go, even though my head was spinning with questions. I sent Kiera back to school with Colleen and crashed to rest. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m., still rattled. Feeling a bit clearer, it all started to click. A sketchy guy on my lawn, the smell of weed in the basement, Colleen acting like it was no big deal, and their weirdly close bond, it added up to something bad. I started wondering if Colleen was smoking with Kiera, maybe even with that guy supplying them. Colleen's not a regular smoker, but she's always trying to act young, playing the cool mom to fit in. It's just like her to do something reckless without thinking it through. At that point, I lost all trust in her as a role model for Kiera. If she was covering for her, or worse, joining in, I couldn't rely on her to keep things straight. I decided to go straight to the source. Without telling Colleen, I called Kiera's school in Topeka that morning and set up a noon meeting with the principal. When I sat down with him, the truth came crashing down. Kiera was barely showing up to class. They'd been sending letters to our house about her attendance, but I'd never seen them, probably because Colleen was hiding them. Her grades were a disaster, and she wasn't even close to graduating on time. My worst fears were confirmed. Now I was left wondering what Kiera was doing with all that free time, skipping school and running wild. I started wondering if Kiera was slipping back into her old ways, maybe running with guys like that shady one I saw on our lawn in Wichita. The big question eating at me was how much Colleen knew. If she was covering for Kiera, that'd be the final straw, proof she was undermining everything I was trying to do. I might have to start thinking about divorce. Looking back, I blame myself some. Back when companies started leaving Kansas for places like Georgia or overseas to countries like Brazil, home prices in our area tanked. A lot of my buddies packed up for states like Nevada or Colorado, but I stayed put. Big mistake. Our house lost half its value, the neighborhood's gone downhill, and the schools have gotten rough. It's like I was a frog in boiling water, too stubborn to see I needed to move to a better spot. I'm not saying Kiera would have been perfect elsewhere, but a decent school district might have made it harder for her to find trouble. That night, I sat Colleen down and asked about Kiera's school attendance. She swore she had no clue Kiera was skipping, saying the school stopped sending letters, so she figured everything was fine. I brought up the weed smell from the basement the day before, and she pointed the finger at Kiera, saying she'd caught her smoking and drinking a while back. Kiera promised to quit the drinking, but Colleen admitted she didn't crack down on the weed because she was scared of pushing Kiera away. She thought being strict might drive Kiera to run off with some guy. Colleen's always been more laid back than me. She doesn't see weed as a big deal. I do. I told her I wasn't gonna sit back and watch Kiera throw her life away, especially in a town full of folks who think that stuff's normal. I wanted better for her. I called up my buddy at the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office and asked for a favor. The next day, I took time off work and brought Kiera to the station. I wanted the sheriff to give her a wake-up call, show her what happens if she keeps going down this path, kind of a scared straight moment, introducing her to women locked up for different crimes. Afterward, I thanked him, and he asked about the guy I'd seen on our lawn. I gave him the name and license plate, and he said he'd look into it. We left, and I hoped it'd sink in for Kiera. What I didn't know was that Kiera, at 17, was already 2 months pregnant. Colleen broke the news that same day, saying she'd just found out because Kiera was showing signs. I was furious and told her Kiera should get an abortion, blaming Colleen for acting more like a pal than a parent. To me, this was a massive embarrassment, and I wanted it dealt with fast. But Colleen wanted to keep the baby. I put my foot down. This wasn't a debate. I wasn't about to let Kiera's life turn into some reality TV disaster. We couldn't see eye to eye, and things with Kiera got tense. I let her have it, yelling about how disappointed I was, how she'd wrecked her future. I thought she got the message, but I was wrong. The next day, Kiera was gone. She'd packed her stuff and ran away. Colleen blamed me, saying I was too harsh. We were both stressed out of our minds. I went to my boss and laid out the whole mess, asking for time off to find her. He was a good guy and gave me 2 weeks, unpaid. For 2 days, we searched everywhere, even tracking down that guy I thought might be the father, assuming he was a dealer. But he was gone. Word was he'd skipped town to dodge some warrants. On the 3rd day, Kiera called Colleen, saying she was okay but didn't want to talk to me because she knew I was pissed. She told us to stop looking. It broke my heart, like I'd lost her for good. Trying to fix her felt pointless, so I threw myself into work and pinned my hopes on Hannah. She was killing it at her boarding school in Lincoln, checking all the right boxes with her grades and attitude, just like me when I was her age. Still, not a day passed without me worrying about Kiera. 5 months later, Kiera had a baby girl. Colleen and Hannah went to see her in Oklahoma, but I couldn't bring myself to go. They came back saying Kiera and her new boyfriend were living in a rundown place, barely scraping by. This guy wasn't just a deadbeat, he couldn't even make it as a dealer. Kiera sure knows how to pick 'em. 3 months before the baby came, she tried reaching out to me, realizing life on the run with a loser wasn't the dream she thought. I ignored her. Colleen brought back a letter from Kiera, and when I read it, she was apologizing, saying she saw now that I'd been right. She regretted shutting me out and said she tried to make me proud but kept messing up. Later, I found out her boyfriend had been in and out of jail for drug charges and couldn't hold a steady job. Colleen had been slipping Kiera and her boyfriend cash to keep their wandering lifestyle afloat, bouncing from one cheap motel to another in Oklahoma with their newborn. That Christmas, Kiera came back to Wichita with the baby for a visit. We talked things out, and I made peace with the little one. But when Kiera asked to stay with us after the holidays, I put my foot down. At 19, she was an adult, and I wanted her to build her own life, separate from mine. I found some calm in knowing she wasn't my responsibility anymore. No way was I letting her deadbeat boyfriend hang around my house, grandkid or not. She could visit for holidays, but I wasn't bankrolling her. Colleen saw it differently. She wanted Kiera and the baby to move in, doting on the little one and trying to sway me. We butted heads hard over it. She gave me the cold shoulder for months, shutting me out completely, but I held firm. Kiera had to go. She wasn't my problem anymore. I told her to head back to Oklahoma and stay there. But come February, she and her no-good boyfriend moved back to Wichita. Just like I figured, he got picked up on an old warrant and landed 7 months in jail. While he was locked up, Kiera and the baby started coming by the house more often. Before I knew it, they'd practically moved in. I didn't even notice at first, but I started warming up to the baby. Her giggles lit up the place, and it brought a spark to Colleen and Kiera, making the house feel alive. Kiera got a job working for Colleen's catering and cleaning business, alongside her 2 other employees, and things seemed to be going okay. But about 5 months later, I found out the boyfriend was out early. I sat Kiera down and made it crystal clear, she could move out and live with him, but I didn't want him near my house. I was blunt, hoping both she and Colleen got the message. For a while, I didn't see him around, at least not when I was home from work. Then one night, as we were getting ready for bed, Colleen dropped a bomb. She said the boyfriend had reached out, asking for a job. Her business was growing, and with Kiera and 2 others already on payroll, she thought they could use an extra hand. She said his record made it tough for him to find work, and his probation officer was pushing him to get a job. She even claimed he was clean, passing regular drug tests, and trying to turn things around. I told her I was glad he was trying, but he needed to do it somewhere else, far from my family. He'd already hurt Kiera enough, and I wasn't about to let him cause more damage. That's where we left it. A week later, I pulled into our driveway after work and there he was, helping Colleen and Kiera unload supplies from the catering van, moving stuff to the backyard shed and basement. I was livid. Turns out, Colleen had hired him behind my back, letting him work as a helper for who knows how long. I confronted him and told him to get off my property. Neither Colleen nor Kiera said a word, they knew I was pissed. I almost kicked Kiera out right then. She swore it wasn't her fault, that she'd told him to stay away, and it was Colleen who let him help. That night, the house was tense. I warned Kiera that if I saw him again, she was out. I pointed out she was earning money now and could get her own place. When I asked why she didn't move in with him, she said she was saving up and didn't want to live with him until he had steady work. She added that if Colleen hadn't hired him, he might slip back into drugs and end up back in jail. I didn't say it out loud, but part of me thought prison might be the best place for him, it'd keep him away from us. I had a bad feeling he'd never change and would just keep dragging my family down. After that, I didn't see him for a couple of months. But then I started noticing the faint smell of weed around the house, especially in the basement. I didn't want to confront Colleen or Kiera, worried they'd lie or cover it up. Instead, I took matters into my own hands and bought a motion-activated security camera, disguised as a wall clock, for the basement. It had 128 gigabytes of storage, could record up to 96 hours of footage, and send alerts to my phone via Wi-Fi. My work schedule was too hectic to check it constantly, so I got a second camera to cover 2 weeks of motion-triggered recordings. My plan was to review it all at once. On a Saturday, I locked myself in my home office and started watching. The first day showed normal stuff, Colleen and Kiera going in and out of the basement, where Colleen kept her office and stored work supplies. Nothing weird. But on the second day, the camera caught something else. It showed Colleen, then Kiera's boyfriend walking in behind her. They got close, too close, sharing a moment that was way too intimate for a basement office. It went on for about 15 minutes, casual, like it wasn't the first time. I sat there, stunned, unable to believe what I was seeing. It was unmistakably Colleen, and it hit me like a freight train. I was so shaken that I fast-forwarded through the security footage, hunting for more evidence of their secret meetups. On another day, I saw them slip into the basement, getting way too close, acting in ways that cut me deep. They were so relaxed, like they knew they wouldn't get caught, even taking time to smoke weed afterward before heading out. I found 2 more days like that, they were meeting up at least 3 times a week. Meanwhile, Colleen and I were barely connecting once a week, so this guy was spending more time with my wife than I was. I was floored. I'd suspected Colleen might be smoking with Kiera, but I never imagined she'd cross that line with Kiera's boyfriend, a guy I couldn't stand. Why would she betray me like this, knowing it'd tear our family apart? It made no sense. I had no clue she was into smoking, and I needed to know when this affair started. If she could do this with him, what else was she hiding? My whole marriage, my whole life, felt like a lie. All the years I poured into our family seemed pointless, like I'd been played for a fool. I noticed their meetups happened when Kiera and the other employees were out working, meaning Colleen was planning these moments alone with him. Fuming, I called Kiera downstairs and showed her the footage. She was just as shocked as I was, her jaw dropping as she watched. She spilled that Colleen started smoking weed with her back in high school, even giving her money to buy it. That's how Kiera got tight with the boyfriend, it started with the drugs, and they ended up dating. Kiera swore she never suspected an affair, though she knew they talked on the phone a lot. They kept it from me, thinking Colleen was just covering for her. Kiera gave me the contact for the boyfriend's probation officer, and I sent him the clip of the guy smoking, hoping they'd test him for drugs. Kiera also filled in some blanks, how Colleen hid her school attendance issues when they got close, and when Colleen started smoking. But she had no idea about the affair, Colleen was a master at covering her tracks, acting like Kiera was the only problem. She'd ruined her own daughter's life just to get high and mess around with this loser. I was beyond pissed and wanted him gone for good. I called my buddy at the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office. He showed up at my house without me asking, wanting to be there when I confronted Colleen. I tried to get him to leave, this was personal, but he stayed, worried I'd lose it and do something I'd regret. When I showed Colleen the footage, she didn't even try to deny it. She wouldn't say when it started, probably scared I'd use it against her. That day, I threw her stuff out of the house. Devastated doesn't cover it, my world was shattered. Kiera was gutted too. Colleen had orchestrated this whole mess, pretending to help while wrecking our family. The betrayal blindsided me. In my eyes, Colleen was worse than Kiera. That day, my sheriff buddy stopped me from going further, calming me down as I tossed her things out. I was consumed with rage, she was the enemy, and her betrayal didn't need explaining. By the next day, my anger turned into a restless need to know when this all began and a burning desire to make Kiera's boyfriend pay for torching my family. I'd sent the video of him smoking to his probation officer, and my sheriff friend, who knew about it, promised to push for quick action. In Kansas, smoking weed at home is legal, so Colleen wasn't breaking any laws. But the boyfriend? He was on probation for drug charges, required to stay clean and in a treatment program, which he clearly violated. It's been 3 days since I kicked Colleen out. She's been blowing out my phone, but I blocked her. She's been talking to Kiera, who's still at the house, using her to pass messages. At first, Kiera was furious about her mom's betrayal, but I noticed she started acting indifferent. I wondered if it was because Colleen was her only source of income. I didn't want Kiera forgiving her just because she had to. I told her I'd support her until she found another job, so she could speak her mind without fear. Colleen manipulated Kiera into buying weed for her, then pinned all the blame on her. I wanted Kiera free from that influence, she's a young mom with challenges, but she could still have a good life away from her mom and that boyfriend. That evening after work, I sat Kiera down for more details. She said it all started when she was 14, caught smoking at school. She pretended to quit to fool us, but kept using. One day, Colleen found weed in her room while cleaning, and instead of stopping her, she joined in. Kiera told me she begged Colleen not to rat her out about the weed, and Colleen kept her secret. But instead of getting rid of it, Colleen started using it herself. Kiera suspected her mom was snooping in her room, since her stuff was sometimes rearranged. After Kiera got caught at school for that shameful act, Colleen was worried and wanted to keep it from happening again. Unlike me, who'd come down hard, Colleen took a softer approach, no judgment. Kiera admitted she was mad at us and did it to get cash for weed. Colleen thought the fix was to give her money to buy it, so she wouldn't resort to those acts again. I had no clue any of this was going on. One day, Colleen caught Kiera smoking in our Wichita backyard and joined her. They went through a couple of blunts, and from then on, Colleen was hooked. They'd smoke when I was at work, covering their tracks. That's when they got super close. Kiera said her boyfriend at the time was giving her weed for free, trying to win her over romantically. She wasn't into him like that, just using him for the drugs, but Colleen was burning through most of what he supplied. At first, Colleen wasn't interested in him either, stringing him along for the free weed while taking money from Kiera. Everything shifted when the boyfriend dropped off some weed at our house, and Colleen met him. To Kiera's shock, Colleen invited him inside. Kiera was about 16 then, and he was in his early 20s. They went to the basement, smoked, and hung out. Kiera left to meet friends, leaving them alone for a few hours. When she got back, they were still down there, but he left soon after. From then on, he kept finding reasons to come by. Once, I even caught him on our lawn. Not long after, he and Kiera started dating, and she got pregnant. At first, she wanted an abortion, especially after I pushed for it, but Colleen convinced her to keep the baby. The boyfriend also threatened her if she tried to end the pregnancy. Kiera knew staying home with a baby would cause major fights, so Colleen and the boyfriend planned for her to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma, until the baby was born. They set it up for her to run away. All that time she was missing, Colleen was in touch with her and the boyfriend, talking on the phone while pretending to me she had no idea where they were. As Kiera laid this out, I couldn't wrap my head around why Colleen was sabotaging my efforts to get Kiera back on track. Back then, I didn't suspect a thing. Now, knowing what I know, I think Colleen was egging her on, giving her the green light to act reckless. I see Kiera as a victim in this mess. My biggest regret is that she didn't open up to me sooner, but I get why she didn't. She was scared of how I'd react. She went on to say that during her pregnancy, Colleen secretly visited her in Tulsa multiple times, slipping them money because the boyfriend kept getting into trouble with the cops and didn't know the area. Their plan was to stay in Oklahoma longer, but his constant run-ins with the law forced them to change course. After that first Christmas when Kiera visited us, Colleen pushed her to move back to Wichita so she could see her grandson more. That's how Kiera ended up back in our house. Hearing all this, it clicked. Colleen was playing both sides, undermining me while pretending to help. Her influence was the root of Kiera's problems, driven by her own selfish wants. Kiera said her relationship with the boyfriend was mostly because of Colleen's pressure. She cared about him but wasn't in love, and she had no clue he was sneaking around with Colleen. Even now, Kiera and Colleen are still in touch, and Kiera's still working for her mom's business. The next week, I met with Colleen to sort out her stuff, which was still at the house. I wasn't as furious as I'd been, especially since Kiera's ex was back in Sedgwick County Jail, unable to make bail. My sheriff buddy told me his bail was set high because he was a flight risk, especially after trying to skip town when the parole officer got the video of him smoking weed. He's facing a long sentence now. I made peace with Kiera, feeling Colleen was mostly to blame for her mistakes, though I kept a close eye on her. During the meeting, with Kiera at home, Colleen apologized for betraying us. She begged me not to divorce her, blaming her affair on her obsession with drugs. She said her business was struggling, and she turned to smoking for a distraction, which led to the affair. Her excuses didn't add up to me, they sounded like nonsense. I didn't fully trust Colleen, but after all the years we'd spent together, and seeing Kiera, who'd been hurt the most by her mom, willing to forgive her, I figured I could try too. Plus, her catering and cleaning business was doing great, running right out of our Wichita home. Moving it somewhere else would have cost a fortune, so I decided to give our marriage another shot, but with strict rules. Before she moved back in, I laid it out, one more lie, and we're done. I'd even been thinking about selling the house and leaving the neighborhood behind. A week later, things seemed to be looking up. Colleen was making an effort to fix her mistakes, being open about where she was and swearing she hadn't spoken to Kiera's ex, who was locked up in Sedgwick County Jail. She and Kiera were working on their relationship, and the business was booming. But a few days later, I noticed a strange car tailing me when I drove from our house to a nearby store in Wichita. At first, I brushed it off. On my way back, though, I spotted it again. I kept my eyes on the driver, letting him know I was onto him. When I got home, I peeked out the window and saw the same car cruise by. I jotted down the license plate and noted what the driver looked like. The next morning, I found all 4 tires on my car slashed and scratches all over the paint. I called the Wichita police, reported the vandalism, and gave them the details about the suspicious car. Turns out, it was stolen. I had a gut feeling it was tied to Kiera's ex, maybe a friend or relative of his. I talked to my boss at the delivery company about openings in southern states like Tennessee or Louisiana. He said there were possibilities, still being worked out, but it'd be a lateral move, not a step up. At that point, I was ready to leave Wichita, even though I'd grown attached to it. I'd put a lot into this community, volunteering as a firefighter, building ties with local cops, but the neighborhood had changed, and the vandalism was the final straw. It wasn't the place it used to be. About 2 weeks after the car incident, Kiera told me her ex had been trying to reach her. He called from jail, and since she didn't recognize the number, she picked up. He said he'd taken a plea deal, avoiding a trial. His charges were a laundry list: drug possession with intent to sell, theft, probation violation, resisting arrest, and a federal charge for moving drugs across state lines. He was looking serious. Kiera said he was blaming me for his mess, acting like I was the problem. I couldn't believe the nerve of this guy, sneaking into my house, wrecking my family, and then pointing fingers at me. It showed how arrogant and reckless he was, thinking he could do whatever he wanted. I was glad he was behind bars and hoped he'd face the full weight of his charges. My only worry was my grandson. As harsh as it sounds, when I look at his face, I see his dad, like a challenge staring back at me. I feel like I'll end up raising him, making sure he doesn't follow in his parents' footsteps. Even though Colleen's been on her best behavior, I can't fully trust her. I still think I should have divorced her. She's let me down with Kiera and now with my grandson. As part of our deal, I bought a $7 drug test kit online and made both Colleen and Kiera use it weekly. So far, they've passed every time. A month later, Kiera blocked all unknown numbers, cutting off her ex's family and friends. She ditched her old crowd and was listening to me, which strengthened our bond. She was growing into the person I always hoped she'd be, even working toward her GED to enroll in college. I checked with my sheriff buddy about her ex's sentencing. He got a mandatory 13-year prison term. I felt a wave of relief, hoping those years might straighten him out, though I wasn't holding my breath. As I was wrapping up the call with my sheriff buddy from Sedgwick County, he invited me to grab a drink at a bar in Wichita, mentioning that an officer from the cell block where Kiera's ex was locked up would be there. At first, I said no way, I wanted nothing to do with that loser anymore. But then I reconsidered. Over the years, I've made a point of building connections with folks in law enforcement and other authority roles, and it's paid off more than once. So, on a Saturday night, I met the officer at the bar. He seemed like a decent guy, and we hit it off, chatting easily. I mentioned Kiera's ex was in his cell block, and though the name didn't ring a bell, he jotted it down to check later. 2 weeks later, I ran into the same officer at a community event in Wichita. Being a volunteer firefighter, I'm often at these gatherings. During our talk, he dropped a bombshell. A woman had visited Kiera's ex for a conjugal visit. At first, he thought it might be Kiera since they have a kid together, but the woman seemed too old. I asked for a description, and he said she was a white woman in her mid to late 40s. He'd caught a glimpse of her name on the check-in list but didn't get a good look at her face, just saw them holding hands after the visit before she left. He was swamped with work but managed to write down the name, though he wasn't sure it was accurate. He took my number and promised to text it to me the next day when he checked the note in his work locker. That night, I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with dread. I knew it couldn't be Kiera, but I prayed it wasn't Colleen. The thought of her visiting him in jail would haunt me. At 9:30 a.m., I got the text. It was Colleen's name. My heart sank. I was already at work, and I knew Colleen and Kiera were at their jobs, as they started earlier than me. All our efforts to rebuild our marriage felt like a cruel lie. She hadn't changed, she was so obsessed with this guy that she'd gone to see him in jail, despite all her tears and apologies. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My first move was to call a divorce lawyer in Wichita and set up a meeting for that day. I also contacted a real estate agent to schedule a walkthrough to put our house on the market. I checked in with my boss about the transfer to a southern state, and he said we'd hear back in 2 weeks. He mentioned a possible position in Austin, Texas, with a chance for a pay bump, though it wasn't locked in yet. Then I called Kiera at work, asking her to come home early. She said she couldn't because it'd mess up her coworker's schedule. I left work early to meet the lawyer. Most of the paperwork was handled over the phone, so the visit was about finalizing details and picking up the divorce papers to serve Colleen. When I got home, Colleen and Kiera walked in. I had the papers ready. Sitting them down, I told Kiera her mom had been visiting her ex in prison, lying to us the whole time. Colleen didn't bother denying it, she just broke down, crying, saying it was only once. I called her out, saying she was a heartless liar. I handed her the divorce papers and told her to get ready to move out because I was selling the house and heading to Texas. Kiera immediately asked if she could come with me, and I said yes. I wasn't as angry as I thought I'd be, just relieved to finally know the truth. I was ready to leave Colleen and Wichita behind, excited for a fresh start, especially with the Texas move looking solid. The next day, I called Hannah in Lincoln, Nebraska, to tell her about the relocation. Colleen came to me that same day, offering to buy the house, even above asking price, to make things right. Nothing she did could fix this, but I wanted the house gone, so I agreed to sell it to her. I was done wasting time in Wichita. She apologized again, admitting she'd screwed up and didn't know why she'd done it, promising to get help. Her words felt empty to me.